know a man who is. Give it up, the star of Sons of Anarchy, the stars of Hellboy, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ron Pearlman. Yeah, please. You got a far better reaction than I did.
You're a little close, okay? Is he okay? Is he all right? He doesn't have a weapon on him, does he?
I think you could take me. Could I just say, not to spoil any secrets here, but you are 72 next month. How in the name of God is that possible?
I'm not there yet, okay? Got another month to go. Don't curse me.
All men are created equal, my
Don't put
ass.
the old Maloik on me.
I really enjoyed your book, by the way, and one of the stories that I loved was that you were doing a script running for a production team, and one of the people you gave it to was a young man. I think he went to do on something in acting called Al Pacino. How did that go? Was it true you spent a summer playing baseball with him?
Yeah, I was working for a woman who was going to direct a world premiere of a new playwright, somebody who was kind of like playwright du jour in that period. And it was like 1969. I was 19 years old. And she said, you need to go drop the script off to this actor. I want to see if he wants to do this play. And it was in like really, really seedy part of East 14th Street in New York. If you know East 14th Street, like Alphabet City, between C and D, you just don't want to be there unarmed. And I just walk up this kind of tenement staircase. Hello, you all right? And knock at the door, and nobody. Knock at the door again, nobody. Knock at the door again. Hey, I'm coming, all right? He opens the door, he's got a towel around him. And it's a young fellow. His name was Al Pacino. Never heard of him before. He never heard of me either. I gave him the script. He says, thanks, I'm not tipping you. I said, it's okay. And that's how I met Al Pacino. Pretty dull story, isn't it? I wish I could have changed the ending a little bit more. But
Something you did get to do yourself in a play was A Few Good Men, when you got to play Colonel Jessup, the Jack Nicholson role. No, unfortunately, I haven't seen the play. Do you get to
actually,
do the...
Jack Nicholson got to play the Ron Pearlman role, so I'd like to think he pretty much stole everything I did. So, you know, Jack, if you're out there, how you doing?
Another legend you got to work with in The Name of the Rose, a film I absolutely adore, was Sean Connery. But you had a very interesting scene with him where you had to spit in his face over and over again. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had to spit in his face over and over again because I couldn't spit in his face, so I kept faking it. And the director said, we're not going to stop doing it until you actually spit in his face, because we absolutely need to see the spit go out of your mouth and into his eye. And I said, but that's Sir Sean Connery. He says, it's all right, my friend. Just give it another ocean. Let it rip. So,
Is that intimidating for a young actor? You've got like shot James Bond.
how many guys get permission to, from James Bond himself to like, just give me a big loogie?
A film you were on that I absolutely obsessed with stories about behind the scenes because it just sounded like the craziest things. Actually, a documentary made about it, The Island of Dr. Moreau. I got to speak to David Twellis, who played one of the Lycans in Harry Potter, and he was on the set, and he was like, I was like 6th or 7th on the call list, but people were just ripping pages and going, here, you do that, I don't want to do it. You had the legendary Marlon Brando, you had Val Kilmer, both going through some fairly tumultuous times, but I understand you bonded somewhat with Marlon Brando.
I wish I could say I bonded with him. I made a lot more of our time together than I should have for the sake of the book. I stretched it into 2 chapters, but it basically was one scene that was meant to be shot in a day and a half, and because the movie was so disorganized and such a mess, it took 6 days to shoot. So At least I got 6 days to spend in the same airspace as Mr. Brando, who, if you're an actor, he's the gold standard. You know, he's the guy he's the one who just like mystifies all actors, and everybody tries to emulate him, and everybody tries to be like him, and everybody tries to figure out how he did what he did. I'm one of them. And so I was a little bit awed and out of my element around him, and not very much myself. But I wrote a book about it, which my friend Andy here has keep referring to, and I think after today the sales should go through the roof, because there's at least 30 of you here, right? You know, so go buy the book. I'm not going to tell you any more of the stories. You have to pay for it, pay retail for it, and put my grandson through college.
Someone who you had a far more fruitful relationship, shall we say, is Guillermo del Toro, who cast you in Kronos. Is it true that there was money issues with that, and your agent turned around and said, look, they won't be able to pay you, get off this film as soon as possible, and Guillermo essentially promised you at some point he would pay you, and you had faith in his vision enough to stick with him?
No, that's not the story at all, but close.
Clearly done my research.
We're in the middle of shooting. We're in like the 3rd week of shooting. Got another week and a half to go. And we're shooting, it's a night scene. We're on the roof in Mexico City, shooting a scene where me and the lead are going to have this to the death fight. And I'm getting ready, and it's starting to get dark, so I know we're going to be shooting soon. And on the other side of the roof is Guillermo, young 26-year-old Guillermo del Toro, who had never directed a movie before, and all of his producers. There were about 5 of them surrounding him. And back then they had these telephones. The mobile phone was like this thick, you know. It was like that thing, that big block. And they were all on this phone, and they keep kind of like looking over at me, and then back to the phone, and looking over at me, and then you know. And I'm going, oh, something nasty. And eventually I see Guillermo sort of like creeping toward me with the phone, and he's sheepishly like looking at me. He goes, Ron, your lawyer is on the phone, Henry, and he needs to talk to you. And before he does, he needs to tell you something. We don't have any more money here. So I pick up the phone, and Henry, my lawyer, says, Ron. I said, Henry, how you doing? He says, don't ask me how I'm doing, okay? Just listen to me carefully. They've run out of money, and you cannot shoot one more shot of this movie. Because if you shoot one more shot, it's as if you're agreeing to work for free. And at that point, I can't protect you. So you have to, you know, very graciously and very respectfully, you know, say goodnight to everybody and leave the set right now. I said, Henry, I can't hear you. We have a horrible connection. He says, you can hear me, Ron. You can hear me just fine. You heard what I said, Ron. I said, Henry, how's the family? He says, screw my family, Ron. Listen to me. You can't shoot another shot of this movie, because if you do, you're agreeing to it. And I click, I hang up, hand the phone back to Guillermo, and I said, so what are we shooting next? And Guillermo, like, all of the color came back in his face, and all the producers came over to me, and there was a lot of hugging and kissing, and we continued to make the movie. And it took them a while, but eventually they paid me every cent that they needed to pay me, because they're the most honorable people I'd ever met in my life, and I knew they were, and I knew I loved them, and I was never going to do anything to harm the well-being of the production. And I think that I didn't do that for any other reason than it was just the right thing to do, but I'm convinced that that is the reason why he got me Hellboy. Is because it was like, oh my God, this is, somehow I have to pay him back for this. And we ended up finishing the movie, and he ended up winning a prize at the Cannes Film Festival, and now he's Guillermo del Toro. and I can't get him on the phone anymore.
He repaid that with I believe he had meetings with Nicolas Cage and The Rock to play Hellboy, and he was adamant, no, Ron Perlman's my guy, and he just didn't show up for the meetings.
Oh no, he repaid. He repaid that gesture many times over, and we continue. I just did Nightmare Alley for him. We're in the middle of working on Pinocchio, which comes out in December of this year. Stopgap animated version of Pinocchio, which proves to be quite interesting. So our relationship has sustained itself over 30 years now, and it's borne a tremendous amount of fruit creatively, but more importantly, we've become like, brothers from other mothers.
You say that about creative, producing creativity. For me, the reason why the Hellboy movies are so much different than any of the kind of Marvel, not that I enjoy the Marvel and the DC ones, but that scene where you were singing Barry Manilow with Abe, you wouldn't see that in anything else. And I think he finds the humanity in characters like that other people don't. Is that part of what makes him so different than any other director or filmmaker?
I mean, the fact that he would fight for somebody who is not mainstream Hollywood movie star material, but more importantly, my kind of way I move through life is I'm very much of an underachiever. I'm usually 15 or 20 pounds overweight. I'm not that Hollywood guy that's in the gym all the time and, drinking protein shakes and stuff. And, I'd much rather stay at home and eat pizza and watch baseball games. And that's the quality that he wanted for this particular superhero. He didn't want him to be one-dimensional, true blue, with that strong chin. He wanted to be a schlub. He wanted to be a guy who liked cats and liked pizza and liked the Marx Brothers and liked the Three Stooges and just happened to have these superpowers, so he happened to be a superhero, but it was very reluctantly that he went through, the motions of saving the world. And that's what he wanted. And, Hollywood wanted him to do something much more conventional. And it took him 7 years to win the war to get me to play the character. Like, they kept throwing all these big movie star names at him, and he just kept saying, yes, we'll make the movie with him. And he was lying. I mean, he was never going to make the movie with anybody but me. So I don't remember what your question was, but I sure had a good time answering it.
We have a couple of mics over here and here, so if anyone wants to ask Ron a question, just pop up there. You mentioned there Nightmare Alley, of course, nominated for Best Picture. With another film you're in, Don't Look Up, do you have any preference now on Oscar night, which one you'd like to see lift the trophy?
I'd like to see them tie for first place.
Of course, you were also in Sons of Anarchy, but initially that was shot, I believe, with Scott Glenn in your role. Right. How did it come about that he was to leave the project and you were to come on to give you, in my opinion, one of your best roles?
Well, Scott Glenn is a phenomenal actor, very, very authentic, very real, very simple. When they shot the original pilot, the network decided that they wanted a much larger, more operatic version of Clay Morrow, which is the character that I ended up playing. And Scott was giving them something very kind of like quiet and real. And they just needed the dynamic of the show to look differently, so they created a list of actors that they would consider, and eventually it ended up going to me.
And just finally, before we go to the questions, you mentioned there about the stop motion for Pinocchio. I know you're probably sick to death of Hellboy 3 questions. Is it possible that you could see yourself completing the trilogy in that format rather than live action?
No, I mean, no. I'm not somebody who likes to mix metaphors like that. I mean, somebody will. Somebody did a reboot of Hellboy. Nothing is sacred in our business. I mean, whenever they think that there's $1 to be made, they'll make it. And they'll probably make Hellboy 3 in some fashion. But to me, the pure way of doing it is, we did Hellboy 1 where we established, what his modus operandi was. Hellboy 2 where we established the fact that he's now going to be the father of these twins. And Hellboy 3 was when it was all going to tie itself up, and you would find out whether he in fact was going to answer to the oracle, which is he would destroy the world, or whether he was going to live up to the Hellboy that Dr. Broom raised, which is a force of good. And you know, the conflict within him would be something that would fuel the whole third film. So huge, like operatic, Nietzschean dialectic.
What was that like for you when you found out, okay, we're remaking this with David Harbour? I think they asked you for a cameo as well. Was any part of you like pissed off that, well, you have the money
No,
for
they
this,
asked me to play Hellboy.
Oh, in the reboot?
Yeah.
Oh. And was it Guillermo?
I said, no, the
originally
only Hellboy I'll do is the Hellboy 3 with Guillermo del Toro. If you can get him and we can make Hellboy 3 and finish the trilogy, I'm in. But other than that, I'm not interested in exploring this character in any new way that you know veers away from what we've already laid down.
I just got the mic over here. First question.
Hi, I have a few questions. My first question is, I want to be an actor when I grow up. Do you have any
Don't do it!
tips?
Don't do it! Look at me. I'm wearing tattered clothing and I have pizza running down my chin. And no, I'm kidding.
Do you have any tips or anything?
Any what?
Tips for like acting, maybe.
Listen, if you want to be an actor, you'll be an actor. You know, the main thing is that if you want to be anything in this world, don't let anybody tell you no. Don't let anything stop you. My main tip is to just act. If there's a school play, make sure you're in it. If your friends are making a little student movie, make sure you're in it. If there's a little community theater in your neighborhood, make sure you go and audition and get into the play. And the more you do, the better you get. And then the more you're seen, and the more you're seen, the more people want to see more of you, and then you end up like me, old and penniless.
We'll go over here now for the next one.
Hi. I was just going to ask you that how did you like feel during all the makeup and stuff? Because the reboot looks different to how they did it back then, but I think how they did it back then did look better. So I just wanted to know like how long you spent in hair and makeup.
What do you mean how they did it back then?
Like how they made you so red, basically.
How they made me so red?
Yeah.
They wouldn't make me that red right now?
No, like it looks better.
Back then?
Yeah.
I mean, the reason why, you know, a lot of those characters just look phenomenal is because I was working with the greatest makeup artists who ever lived. But I've also worked with shitty makeup artists, and stuff's not going to look so good. So, you know, you get what you pay for. But yeah, I mean, Hellboy was designed by Rick Baker, who's won 8 Academy Awards and is trained with the best, and, you know, so the chances of him looking... He also designed and executed Beauty and the Beast, which is the first time I worked with Rick Baker, the TV show I did for 2 years on CBS.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Go over here now for the next one.
So, out of all of the animated movies and like children's TV shows that you've done, what character was your favorite to voice?
I have to say my favorite, I don't usually pick favorites because I've been really lucky and had so many things that I love. But with regard to animation, I think my favorite so far is The Book of Life. The character was Izibalba. It's about the Day of the Dead. It's about the Mexican holiday. And that was so much fun to do. Great cast, great script, great director.
That's one of my favorite movies. Thank you.
Thank you.
You go over here now for the next one.
Next one. So your friend Guillermo del Toro is a huge Universal Monsters fan, and so is Rick Baker. Your friends are both. Do you like them as well?
Monsters?
Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman.
I'm not as devoted to that world as they are.
Yeah.
But I'm very grateful that they want to bring me along into their sort of celebration for those classic monsters, and allow me the opportunity to be their muse, to enact their vision for what they want to do in terms of expressing the point of view of these classic monsters.
Sorry.
It's not my thing, but it looks like it's my thing because of how much I do of it.
Another quick question is, when you were getting ready to do Hellboy, did you have to do any research at like reading the comics of the character, or did you?
There was nothing to do with Hellboy except read the comics because Hellboy is a made-up character.
Yeah.
And so the only thing you wanted to do was get everything that Mike Mignola ever wrote and pick his brain about questions you had about his point of view, his motivation, his values, etc.
No. Thank you.
Just on that, Guillermo was supposed to be doing Frankenstein a couple of years ago, and I read contrasting reports. One, Doug Jones was going to be playing Frankenstein's monster, or it was going to be you. Were you ever in any conversation based on that? I don't think it sounds like you were.
We never got to the point where it was serious enough so that there was any, real conversation to be had. And, I've been around long enough to know I don't get excited about anything until this is now happening, and you're going to be the guy that is going to play the character. That's the only time I start to get excited about things.
Over here.
Would there have been any roles that you would have passed on were there that you would like to get given a try at now, if you're given a second chance?
I never really turned anything down that I regret. I pretty much say yes to everything. If you offer me something now, I'll probably say yes. Don't try me, okay?
Go over here.
What was your favorite scene to shoot in all your movies?
In all the movies?
Yeah, if you had to pick one, which one would be your favorite?
The Barry Manilow, Can't Smile Without You, with Abe Sapien, where the two of us are getting drunk on Tecate beer and singing Barry Manilow love songs. And we're superheroes. Kind of absurd when you think of it.
Over here.
Hey Ron, I actually have a question about Beauty and the Beast. Like how your son grew up.
Yeah, I thought Vincent was a character that would have transferred quite well to the big screen, and we would have been able to probably create more magic in a movie setting than we were able to do on a weekly TV show where you have a small amount of resources and you have a tight schedule. Get a glimpse at in the show, but can you imagine if you got to see that on a huge canvas?
It would have been really cool, yeah.
Yeah. So I tried for a long time to get the movie version of Beauty and the Beast up and growing, but it just never came to be.
Thank you.
Over here, the shiftiest looking question answer I've ever seen.
Was there ever a movie that you watched and you wish you could have acted in?
My God, so many. So many. You want me to name a few, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of anything right now. But I'll get back to you. Give me your name and home address and your phone number, and I'll call you this morning around 3 o'clock.
I pick African Queen for you. I could see you as a good Bogart.
African Queen. There's a lot of movies that were, shot long before I was born that I watch and wish I was in, But that's a different story.
Over here.
In the first and second Hellboy movie, what was your least favorite scene to shoot?
In the what?
In the first and second Hellboy movie, what was your least favorite scene to shoot?
I don't remember having a scene in either of the Hellboy movies that I didn't love. I really had a great time. Guillermo's scripts were so good, Each scene was so good. His relationship with the other actors was so good. His love story between him and Liz was so good. I mean, I had nothing but good stuff to do. So sometimes we were really cold. We were shooting them at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was, early winter in Budapest.
Yeah.
And I hated that, but it wasn't anything to do with the movie. It had to do more with the fact that I was just so miserable and cold. And
Okay, thank you.
Over here.
Hi, is it hearing me? I can't tell.
Yeah, can hear you
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. For Hellboy 1 and 2, was there any props that you got to keep, like, for example, the Good Samaritan?
Guillermo took all the props. That bastard. I went to get my coat. He'd already gotten that. It was in his closet. He took everything. What did I take? There was little things that he wouldn't think to take that I took. There was a little ribbon that Hellboy wore in the back of his little ponytail. I have that. That's about it.
Oh, and sorry, I kind of know this was already kind of asked, but in the start of Hellboy, did you read any of Mike Mignola's comics before you started the role?
Yeah, I read everything he wrote, and then we had long talks about, what he thought of what we were going to do with the film, and whether he had any suggestions and anything that I should be thinking about, and where did the character of Hellboy spring in his imagination? Why did he create Hellboy? What was he thinking? All those things would have been helpful for me to figure out, like, what his humanity was.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Over here.
Hi, Mr. Pearlman. I'm a big fan, and I was just wondering, like, you've played Hellboy, and I was wondering, are there any other comic book characters you would have liked to play? Like, if you could choose one comic book character, was there anyone else you'd like to play?
There was absolutely every single thing Josh Brolin has ever gotten to play should have gone to me.
You would have been a great Thanos.
Yeah, but there was this other one in the Ryan Reynolds thing.
Cable.
Oh, Deadpool, Cable.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, Josh Brolin, you seem like a really sweet, decent, good-looking fellow, but get the fuck out of here.
Also,
I wipe up the floor with you.
Also, I was just wondering, before doing Hellboy, what was your idea of like when you were approached to do Hellboy, were you like, I'm not a huge fan of comic book films because I know.
Oh yeah, I was. No, thank you. I'm not interested.
No, because I remember in the late '90s, early 2000s, comic book movies were kind of laughed at because of that.
I was very aware of the effort that Guillermo was putting up on my behalf. I was completely convinced that he would never accomplish getting me the role. But when he finally did, it was monumental achievement. And I don't even have the words to describe what it felt like being the recipient of that great gift. Him fighting for 7 years on my behalf and then winning. So yeah, there was no chance of saying anything but thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Over here.
Hi, Rod. I hope you enjoyed the weekend. Thanks for coming over. I just want to say, of all the Star Trek films, Star Trek Nemesis is my favorite by far, and I know that some of the actors had kind of issues with the director, Stuart Baird, at the time it was made back in 2002. So I just want to say, is there anything you'd like to change about the way that the Reman Viceroy was portrayed, or were you happy with the way that the script went for Star Trek Nemesis at the time back in 2002?
What I remember most about Nemesis was my relationship with Tom Hardy. And nobody knew who Tom Hardy was at the time. The word around the set was there's this young stud who is going to be somebody really quick. But he's really young, he hasn't done very much, and he's playing the Picard look-alike. And me and Tom got along like a house on fire. I mean, we were buds. We just did a lot of hanging out. We did a lot of laughing. We really dug each other. Now he's, you know, like Guillermo, he doesn't answer my phone calls. He's, you know, he laughs when he hears my name and shit. It's very painful. Please don't bring that up ever again, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Over here.
What was your favorite movie that or project, it can be a TV show even, that you've ever worked on?
Right after we finished with Sons of Anarchy, I became involved with a show called Hand of God, and I became one of the founding producers of it. And so I was involved in shaping the show and getting the show sold. We got it sold to Amazon Prime, and we did 2 seasons of it. And I was involved in figuring out who was going to be on the crew and everything like that, who were going to be the directors and stuff. I was incredibly proud of that show, and I had a lot more to do with that show than I normally have when I'm just an actor. So I have nothing but incredibly fond memories of that, and I wish it would have lasted longer.
And then I have one more question. Who was your favorite?
No, sorry, son. You only get one. You only get one goddamn question around here, okay? I'm kidding.
Who was your favorite and least favorite cast member that you've ever worked with?
Can it be the same person?
I mean, if you want.
My favorite, and I can't tell you who my least favorite person is, because she'll never speak to me again. Katie Seagal will never speak to me again if I.
Little paparazzi
My
there.
favorite, geez, I mean, if I say my favorite, then all the other people who I worked with are going to go, why not? What happened? I thought we were tight, Ron. What's up? So you're really putting me in a horrible position. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you anyway.
Thank you.
How are you doing, Ron? So you've had a lot of iconic roles throughout your filmography. Another one being Reinhardt in Blade 2. So you talked about how Guillermo had relationship with the cast and made the set kind of comfortable. We all know that Wesley Snipes has been prickly on sets. So how was that? Was there any incidents kind of on set, or how was it filming Blade 2 with him?
He was in his pre-going to jail period. I would say you could split Wesley's career into 2 parts: pre-going to jail, post-going to jail. The guy that came out of jail was definitely more gentle, and that's all I'll say.
Thanks very much.
Over here, please.
Hey Ron, how's it doing? You played many roles with makeup and prosthetics, but then in a different film, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, you actually used motion capture. How do you feel about either motion capture or prosthetics, and what do you prefer?
I feel like in motion capture, my contribution is very limited. The people who are most responsible for the ultimate performance you're going to see are other artists. Whereas with prosthetics, once you put the prosthetic on me, that's where the other artists finish. I deliver the performance from there. So the performance that you see is ultimately, I'm the one who's most responsible for. I don't like cheating. I don't like feeling like, I meant to give this performance, but somebody else decided to do this and turn the wheels and knobs and stuff and make this louder and this, So I'm not a big fan of mocap work as an actor. I like to be more in control of. You ask me to give a performance, I'd like for the audience to see the performance that I meant to give, rather than somebody else's version of it. If you understand what I'm saying.
One last question. Sorry. You also have a great career in voice acting. How do you feel about it?
I love the voice acting stuff. You know, it sustained me a long time when I wasn't getting any real acting work. That's when I started doing. In fact, there's a couple of guys here, Maurice LaMarche and Peaky in the Brain, huh?
Robert Paulson.
Rob Paulson are here. I go back to the 90s with those guys. I couldn't get arrested as an actor back in the 90s, but I was doing a lot of voice work, and yeah, I have a real fondness for the voice stuff.
Something to do with the voice work that I love is you do the UFC intros now. How did you become involved? Are you a fan of the sport, or is this?
I love UFC. Yeah, I love UFC, and Dana White and I met right in the very beginning when he was first starting the thing, you know. I was working at FX at the time. FX had a show called The Ultimate Warrior or something.
Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah, and Dana and I met, and I guess he invited me to be the voice of UFC, so it's just something I'm kind of proud of, because I dig the sport a lot.
Over here, please.
Thank you. Hi, sir. Like, this is just a simple question, but I'm just going to talk about the 2019 Hellboy reboot. I was just wondering, what is your opinion on it?
Never saw it.
You're lucky. You're very lucky. Very lucky. Thank you for the question. Thank you.
Over here, please.
When you first started acting, who did you look up to?
I had so many heroes. My dad is the one that made me a lover of movies. My dad really, really, like, you know, he was a laborer, and he didn't make a lot of money. His idea of a great life was watching other people live it in movies. And I would watch his face watching John Wayne, and I just was in Ashford Castle where they shot The Quiet Man, and which is a love letter to Ireland. If you haven't seen The Quiet Man, you can't consider yourself Irish. You'll have to relinquish your passport. So, anybody here not see The Quiet Man? Oh my God. That is your assignment. That's my dad's favorite movie. And John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara and Ward Bond and Barry Fitzgerald. It's a love letter to Ireland. But yeah, I don't remember your question, but I'm just reminiscing here.
Okay, thank you.
I remember my dad tricking my mom. My dad is a massive John Wayne fan, and we were all going on holidays one year. And he just picked this place at random. She's like, oh yeah, sounds good. And as we're pulling up, it's like, welcome to Kong, home of the Quiet Man. And she's like, you fucking... just gotta go over here because I'm conscious a few people have been queuing a while over here. So, you want to go ahead there?
How are you doing, Ron? Big fan. Just wondering, what was your favorite, or at least one of your favorite experiences filming Sons of Anarchy?
The chapel, you know, sitting around the oak table with the boys, both when the camera was rolling and in between shots when we were just sitting around bullshitting. I mean, I really had a fondness for those guys, and to me that was the essence of the world of the show, was the nucleus of the guys. And that was emblematic of what made that show different from everything else, was those chapel scenes where we decided who lives, who dies, what our strategies are going to be, how we're going to make our money, how we're going to cut our losses, etc.
Thank you very much.
Over here, please.
Hi, Ron. I was just wondering, the process of voice roles. Well, like, I'm an actor myself, and I get sent scripts of voiceover roles, and it asks to make up a voice. I'm just wondering, do you have like a specific process being an animated voice actor yourself?
Well, the first thing I ask for is a sketch of what the character looks like, and once I see what he looks like, I kind of begin to get a sense of what he might sound like. So it's a combination of seeing an image that the artist has developed, what he's going to ultimately look like after I voice him, and he becomes the final cartoon. And then the script, you know, the script that gives you all the clues about who he is and, you know, how he thinks, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the...
Do you try to hide your voice? Because obviously being Hellboy, you have a very distinct voice of people can sort of hear you like in Sons of Anarchy, and they'd sort of know you as like, oh, that's Hellboy. Like, do you try to hide your voice in your voiceover, or do you sort of
No,
try
I
to bring
mean, you
that through?
basically, you know, the main thing is, you know, you have to sound authentic. You have to sound like you really exist. So you don't want to be, if you're too fanciful so that you don't sound like you're real, then you've kind of blown it. But the main thing is to just make the adjustment in order to become the person that you're being asked to play, to whatever degree you need to.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Spider-Man over here.
Hi, Ron. Big fan. I know you worked on the show Troll Hunters. What was it like working on the show as Buller?
What was it?
Troll Hunters.
Troll Hunters.
Yeah.
I didn't love playing Bular. I got a sore throat every time I played Bular. It's too much of that. But thank you for the question.
Also, did you ever work with any of the other like voice actors, like Anton Yelchin or any of them?
I don't remember him, but I worked with, I mean, I've done so many cartoons and so many voice characters, and I've worked with the greatest of the greats. The two guys I mentioned, Rob and Maurice, who are here, and Jim Cummings and Jeff Bennett and Dana Delaney. The way I met Dana Delaney ended up being my wife on Hand of God, but she played Lois Lane on Superman. Kevin Kilroy, who plays Batman.
Conroy.
Kevin Conroy, who plays Batman. Yeah, I worked with a ton of great actors on voiceover stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
The Beauty and the Beast fan here.
Oh, me?
Yes, it was a joke.
No, did not get that at all, sorry. Big fan of Sons of Anarchy. It's one of the reasons that I ride a Harley now. Quick question is, do you still get a chance to ride? And what do you ride at the moment?
I ride a Tesla. With the windows up. I hate noise. If you ever ride by me, I'll probably shoot at you.
It's all about the noise, though. Thank you.
Sure.
Over here, please.
Hi, Ron. Just want to say, well, hope you're enjoying the weekend in Dublin. Two best movies was Hellboy and Alien Resurrection. You played a badass character in those movies. And you sang that song with Abe beautifully. Fair play to you. Keep making good movies, Ron.
Thank you very much, bro.
Over here.
Thank you.
Just wondering, Ron, whenever you were growing up or whenever you were first getting into the business, who were some of your acting influences? Or whenever you first got into the business, was there anyone who really helped you along?
Well, like I said, you know, everybody loved Brando. My dad's heroes were Errol Flynn and Spencer Tracy and Jimmy Cagney and Humphrey Bogart and Gary Cooper and even Frank Sinatra like did some pretty good acting in his day. So those were my heroes when I was a kid growing up. Everybody my dad loved, I loved. And then Montgomery Clift and a little bit further down the line, Peter O'Toole, Sean Connery, Sir Anthony Hopkins. To this day, if there's only one person that I would get in the presence of that I would become tongue-tied with, that's Tony Hopkins right now. So if I ever got a chance to work with him before it's all over with, that would be a thrill.
Thanks, Ron.
So we're getting the wrap. We've only got time for one more question, unfortunately. So this is the last one today, so make it a good one. Hopefully better than the last one on that side.
No pressure. Hi, Ron. I'd love to know more about the connection between Hellboy and Ireland, because I noticed in Hellboy 2, I think it's based in Antrim maybe, and the Giant's Causeway. I'd just love to know from you the inspiration and kind of the design and why and the process of Ireland in Hellboy.
You'd have to ask Guillermo, because he's the one that made that connection. But I have the feeling because Ireland is such a folkloric, magical place. tremendous amount of beautiful stories come from here, mythical. It has its own mythicism and its own magic. And I think Guillermo was kind of tapping into that. But you'd have to ask him exactly. I'm just guessing.
I'll ask him, so.
Yeah, I'll give you his number.
Thank you, thank you.
Come see me afterwards.
No worries.
Ron's
I'll
going to
give
be
it to you
down.
now. It's 818. Never mind.
Ron's going to be downstairs at his booth doing autographs, taking pictures. So if you have any more from, go down, ask him there. Ron, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Ron Pearlman. Thank you.